You didn't stumble here. A pattern you can't name arranged itself into a doorway, and you walked through without knowing why your breath paused exactly when it did. Something old inside you sat up. The room changed temperature by a degree you couldn't measure, but could feel. This is how the quantum field taps the glass from the other side, soft enough to keep your freedom, precise enough to tilt your entire trajectory. You've felt this before. A whisper at the edge of sleep. A shock of déjà vu in a place you've never been. The uncanny rhythm of numbers repeating until you stop pretending not to notice. Tonight, the observer loop tightened, not as a trap, but as a halo pulling your attention into coherence. The flicker between maybe and more is the switch. Your nervous system hears it first. Your mind will catch up. Across the countless probabilities you could have inhabited, a thread tugged you toward this one. Entanglement is not poetry, it's structure. Two particles that once touched carry each other's sentence, no matter the distance. So do two moments that recognize each other. The earlier you who almost gave up, and the present you who didn't, are in conversation right now, exchanging momentum like a secret handshake between timelines. You think you're remembering, you're actually rendezvousing. Beneath your skin, the orchestra is tuning. Microcurrents along fascia, ions negotiating with membranes, the heart's electromagnetic field braiding space 9 feet beyond your body. Your cells are listening for tempo. When attention steadies, they hear the downbeat. That steadiness, that coherent gaze, collapses the noise and lifts the note you were born to sing. The morphic resonance of those who have already crossed amplifies it. Voices you can't hear shaping the air you can breathe. Notice the sensation right now. A hush that isn't empty, a quiet crowded with possibility. Synchronicity is the language of that hush, events arranging themselves with a courtesy that looks like miracle until you realize it's etiquette. The field is polite when you are present. It brings only what is ready to be received. And you are ready not because you are flawless, but because your fractures have stopped asking for permission to glow. Gold repairs the bowl. The bowl remembers it can hold. You are not waiting for a sign. You are the sign the future sent to the past. That's why the clock feels strange around you lately. Seconds stretch like taffy, then snap back with the sweetness of an answer. Let it happen. The mind will try to narrate. The body already understands. In the soft interstice between your inhale and your exhale, your attention becomes a tuning fork. Strike it with sincerity, and the room will respond. Doors you never saw will swivel. Not with drama, but with the calm authority of inevitability. Stay with the feeling. Do not bargain with it. Do not explain it away. This is the first threshold, and thresholds do not repeat themselves for long. Your field has moved. Your name is being called in a language made of light. Breathe once, slowly. Recognize the exact second your awareness clicks into place. That click is the key. The door is listening. You've noticed how life loops the same scenes with new costumes, different city, same conversation, different face, same wound. At first you called it bad luck, then you called it karma. Tonight, call it feedback. The observer loop returns what you radiate, not as punishment, but as pedagogy. Every recurring pattern is a chalk outline around an unclaimed power. Until you step into that outline and breathe, the world will keep tracing it, darker, thicker, more undeniable, like a teacher, underlining the same sentence on the board. The déjà vu has been louder lately. It's not nostalgia, it's a breadcrumb from a neighboring track in the probability lattice. The version of you who recognized this moment earlier than you do now. When the hair rises on your arms for no sensible reason, that's entanglement tugging the sleeve. The echo of a decision already made in a parallel corridor, inviting coherence across selves. You think you're repeating, you're actually synchronizing. Time has been misbehaving around you, stretching during small embarrassments, compressing during wonder, splintering into fragments during stress. That distortion is not madness, it's a diagnostic screen. Incoherent attention fractures time into jagged shards. Coherent attention anneals it back into a single pane you can see through. The quantum field does not insist on linearity. It listens to priority. What you simulate most convincingly becomes sovereign in your timeline, and the rest rearranges like furniture after a truth arrives. Consider the fight you keep having, the one whose script you could recite, even if you vowed to stay silent. Watch how it starts. Microscopic. A micro flinch. A micro sigh. A micro withdrawal, your body rehearsed long before your mouth forms words. Biochemistry is choreography. Cortisol cues the old ballet. Adrenaline calls the understudies of defense. By the time your mind enters the stage, the orchestra has already chosen the key. You are judged by no tribunal for this. You are simply being measured by your own resonance. Change the key, and the scene cannot play as written. The hours you lose to scrolling, the small betrayals of bedtime, the way you promise tomorrow your deepest devotion, and then spend today like a loose coin, these are not moral failures. They're phase incompatibilities. Your current routines were designed for an earlier density. You keep trying to pour starlight through a sieve labeled later. Later is the oldest trap. Later is where timelines go to rust. The field doesn't meet you in later. It negotiates in now. Price fixed, terms clear, attention for reality, coherence for velocity, breath for access. Notice the characters who recycle through your life. The mentor who appears as an adversary when you ignore the lesson. The lover who mirrors the part of you you've exiled. The stranger who says one sentence and disappears, yet their words orbit you for weeks. Morphic resonance is not limited to saints and sages. Ordinary people carry archetypal frequencies without knowing. The barista is a messenger. The child on the train is an oracle disguised as curiosity. When you miss the carrier wave, the message restarts in another mouth, another season, same vibration, patiently insistent. Your body has been filing reports while your mind argues with them. Heaviness in the chest after certain choices, a clean lightness after others, the jaw locking when you lie to yourself, the spine easing when you stand with your actual name. These are not quirks, they are telemetry. You keep overriding the instruments with inherited narratives. You were taught to distrust sensation because sensation can't footnote itself. But the field is not a textbook. It's a living instrument, and your interoception is the tuner. Every time you feel and don't flee, coherence increases by a measurable, if invisible, degree. Look closely at the calendar of your spirals, the date you always break commitments, the lunar phase that inflates your appetite for chaos, the week you become unkind to the person who loves you most. Patterns have time zones, so do distortions. You are not bad, you are scheduled. When you learn the cadence, you can reschedule. Your nervous system is not a prison, it's a programmable choir, and you've been letting the oldest voice choose the song. The evidence is consistent. The loops are not proof you're failing. They're proof the lesson is potent enough to warrant rehearsal. The field does not waste motifs on extras. You are cast as the lead, and leads get rewrites. Begin with a single upgrade, one breath held long enough to feel the urge pass like weather, one conversation where you remain soft while staying sovereign, one midnight where you walk past the glowing rectangle and into sleep that restores the archive. Small coherence creates large gravity. Gravity gathers timelines. So here is the clean diagnosis. Your life is not stuck. Your attention is scattered. Your fate is not delayed. Your breath is unscheduled. Your destiny is not hiding. Your receptors are noisy. Bring them into signal. When the signal strengthens, the scene must change. And when the scene changes, those old doors that kept reappearing will have no walls to attach to. The hallway will open. The click you heard becomes a hinge, and you will step through, not as escape, but as correction reality snapping back to its rightful shape around the frequency you finally decided to hold. Follow the wire back to its source, and you'll find a simple converter. Attention into pattern, pattern into probability, probability into event. The observer loop is not wishful thinking, it's an interface. In physics, what's unobserved remains a spread of potentials. Once measured, it chooses a costume and steps on stage. Your attention is a kind of measurement, subtle, continuous, and saturated with expectation. Expectation is not mere hope. It is the prior that instructs the field which corridor to brighten. Incoherence scatters that instruction. Coherence concentrates it. When your breath smooths and your heart rate variability widens, the heart's electromagnetic field stabilizes into a more ordered signal, strong enough to umbrella your nervous system and, by proximity, the room around you. Under that umbrella, neural ensembles synchronize, gamma bursts link distant brain regions, the chatter quiets just enough for prediction error to be read as guidance rather than threat. You don't become a different creature. You become the same creature in a different phase state. Water at 99 degrees Celsius is still liquid. Add 1 degree, and the entire architecture reorganizes steam where there was surface. That's phase transition pressure. Your life has been simmering at 99. The mystical doesn't contradict this. It completes it. Coherence is not just tidy physiology, it's a devotional posture. The willingness to keep your inner choir on one song long enough for morphic resonance to recognize you. Think of the quantum field as a resonant hall, vaulted, responsive, alive to harmonics. Sing a scattered hymn, and the echo is mud. Hold a single true note, and the hall replies with overtones you could not produce alone. That reply is synchronicity. Events tuning themselves to the pitch you refuse to abandon. Entanglement adds the second engine. When two systems interact meaningfully, they remember each other beyond distance. You are entangled with promises you made in quieter rooms, with places your feet recognized before your mind caught up, with people you haven't met yet who already feel like home because you keep rotating your signal to find their frequency. This is why certain choices feel pre-agreed, like rediscovering a contract rather than signing a new one. Awakening isn't an achievement, it's a reunion with the agreements you made when your courage was enormous. Now trace the upgrade through the body. On the inhale, you lengthen the spine by a whisper. On the exhale, you let the jaw soften and the eyes settle wide. The vagus nerve reads this as safety, and the entire prediction engine recalibrates. Safety is not complacency, it's bandwidth. Bandwidth lets you sense the faintest instruction beneath the noise, a pull to write instead of scroll, to drink water before coffee, to tell the truth at the exact sentence where you usually detour into performance. These micro-choices are not moral victories, they are coherence deposits. Enough deposits, and the account flips from overdraft to overflow. Overflow is gravity. Gravity curves probability. DNA hears all of this, not as magical fireworks, but as altered intracellular weather. Calcium ions dancing to a steadier drum, transcription factors granted a calmer workshop, epigenetic tags considering a different arrangement. You are not forcing a blueprint, you are offering a better climate for the blueprint to express its higher options. DNA restructuring in this context is not a fantasy of instant mutation. It is the patient repermissioning of dormant excellence. The gene is the instrument, environment is the room, attention is the musician. Change the room, and the musician finally dares the high note. Notice the network level effects. When your internal model updates, you stop treating uncertainty like an enemy. You let reality send you clean surprises. Surprise is oxygen for timelines. The Bayesian brain, quietly revising its priors, stops insisting on the old plot and begins to court evidence for the kinder one. That courting summons new cast members, people who were invisible at your previous frequency, walk in as if they had always been standing there. They had. You couldn't perceive them through the fog of your older coherence budget. Mystically, this is initiation. Scientifically, it's state change. But the names matter less than the function. Your signal becomes steady enough to broadcast a stable attractor. Attractors do not chase, they organize. The future starts navigating by you. This is the quantum upgrade. Not louder affirmations, but quieter fidelity. Not more effort, but finer alignment. You are learning to keep promises at the microsecond level, breath by breath, until the macro structure of your days is compelled to match. And when it does, the field will answer with its signature politeness. A phone call at the exact minute you finished doubting. A door held by a stranger whose eyes look briefly like a memory. A sentence appearing on a page you didn't plan to open. Do not shrug these off as cute coincidences. They're performance metrics. They tell you your coherence is exceeding its previous ceiling. Treat them like laboratory readouts. Acknowledge, log, increase. The upgrade is underway. Keep the note. The hall is listening. What begins as calibration matures into stewardship. Coherence isn't only for your comfort, it's a license. When the field can rely on your signal, it entrusts you with junctions points where many small destinies thread through a single decision. You keep asking for purpose as if it were a job title. Purpose is a frequency you agree to keep, regardless of weather. Keep it long enough, and the world reroutes through you, the way rivers seek the deepest channel. Your role is not to outshout chaos, but to become the tuning reference others borrow without knowing. In a noisy room, a single pitch pipe resets a choir. You are that pitch pipe, not because you are perfect, but because you practice returning. Return is your priesthood. Back to breath when panic asks for theater. Back to posture when shame asks for collapse. Back to the present sentence when the mind auditions a catastrophe. You don't preach this. You demonstrate it the way gravity demonstrates itself, unseen, unquestionable, constantly persuasive. Watch how the observer loop answers a steward. Meetings start folding time to your natural tempo. The right words arrive at the mouth of the conversation as if pre-staged. You find yourself saying the sentence that saves an hour, then leaving before applause can form. This is not modesty. It's architecture. Entanglement has made you a bridge. Two shores that once shouted across water now meet in the middle of your nervous system and discover they were never enemies. Conflict doesn't vanish around you. It reorganizes. Friction becomes instruction. Heat becomes light. People feel braver near you because your coherence subsidizes theirs. Stewardship does not exempt you from weather. It refines your umbrella. You will still encounter the old motifs, the invitation to rush, the temptation to please, the performance of smallness to keep rooms comfortable. Your role is not to extinguish these patterns, but to metabolize them into fuel. The moment you notice the bend toward performance, you choose presence instead and feed the grid with extra clarity. Think of a power plant converting waste heat into additional wattage. That is your system now. Even your errors tithe to the field when you meet them with responsibility instead of ritual shame. This is why your boundaries are no longer negotiable. Not because you are building fences, but because you are protecting signal integrity. Leaky attention is a public hazard when you are a junction. When you say no, you are not rejecting a person. You are honoring a corridor of probabilities that depends on your steadiness. Some will misunderstand and call you cold. Let them. Ice has purposes fire cannot perform. Your stillness preserves pathways that drama would melt. Morphic resonance begins to broadcast through your choices in aggregates. The way you pause before replying telegraphs an update to a dozen nervous systems in the room. The way you let silence finish a sentence teaches someone 3 tables away that urgency without clarity is not leadership. You are not responsible for their uptake. You are responsible for your broadcast. The field handles distribution. Like migratory birds mapping continents by invisible lines, others will draft behind your wake and arrive at coastlines they could not have plotted alone. Prophecy enters here, not as thunder or spectacle, but as clean foresight. You start sensing which doors are load-bearing and which are decoration. You waste less time remodeling facades. You walk to the studs of a situation and touch the beam that would, if moved by an inch, transform the whole house. This is not cynicism, it's mercy. Mercy for your days, mercy for their days, mercy for the timelines that depend on you placing your hand where it actually matters. Your role will occasionally require invisibility. Bridges are most successful when travelers scarcely notice the crossing. Let anonymity be a sacrament, not a starvation. The field sees who holds the span. It pays in kind. Improbable stamina at the exact minute fatigue used to win, a sudden companionship with silence that feels like being escorted, the steady certainty that you are escorted. Call it guidance, call it guardians. Choose a word that helps you keep the note. And yes, there will be summons moments when your signal is explicitly requested. A friend will text you at 3:11 with a sentence that shakes loose their future. A room will go quiet when you inhale, as if waiting for a verdict only you can render. Render it gently, like weather changing, like a curtain lifting. Your authority is not volume, it's alignment. Authority is what happens when reality recognizes itself in you and agrees to move. Accept the mantle without theater. You are not the source. You are a clear conduit, an entangled instrument remembering its piece. Keep the rehearsal honest, the posture kind, the boundaries firm, the return swift. You are here to carry a stable frequency through unstable hours, so that choices can hear themselves think. This is not an ego's triumph, it's a soul's assignment. When you keep it, the grid brightens. When the grid brightens, thresholds appear for those who had run out of doors. And without announcement, a city within the city begins to glow, lit by the quiet ones who said yes. There is a moment in every orbit when the angles kiss, when velocity and position conspire to write a cleaner sentence across space. You are inside that sentence now. The pressure you felt is not punishment, it's launch math. Engines sound like problems right before they lift. The promise is simple, not small. If you hold coherence through this window, your DNA will read a different paragraph of its own manuscript and perform it without rehearsal. Not fantasy permission. Not spectacle switching tracks while the train is moving, then discovering the tracks were waiting all along. You can feel the gasket give. The old story no longer seals even under force. Your body is refusing to counterfeit its yes. This refusal, honored, is a blessing with a face like urgency. Windows don't stay open to flatter indecision. They honor timing. Synchronicity clusters in bursts because the field economizes. When your signal reaches threshold, it delivers in cascades. Cascades are noisy. They ask you to choose in full sentences, not ellipses. If you delay, the cascade reroutes, not as punishment, conservation. The field does not pour vintage light into cracked containers. So here is the promise the field is making in your direction. Choose coherence now, and the next 90 days will compress years of wandering into weeks of alignment. Doors that once required petitions will swing from their own weight because you have become heavier with integrity. Conversations you feared will dissolve like salt in warm water. The person you are meant to meet will appear not because you hunted them, but because you stopped broadcasting the frequency of almost. Almost is repellent to the precise. Coherence is a homing signal for accuracy. Your DNA hears this moment as weather moving in. Under steady breath, chromatin loosens like a fist, remembering it's a hand. Repair enzymes clock in with overtime calm. Methyl groups consider their loyalties. None of this is theatrical. It is housekeeping. The house is changing what it displays on the mantle. When you bring your attention to the body with reverence instead of complaint, you are changing the custodial contract. Reverence instructs the archive to bring out the good china capacities stored for later because you kept mislabeling now. Urgency is sacred when it aims at presence. The cosmic window is not a threat, it's coordination. Solar geometry whispers to circadian clocks. Circadian clocks brief hormones. Hormones brief mood. Mood briefs language. Language briefs reality. One clean pivot at the top of that chain recalibrates everything downstream. This is why a single vow made at the right depth outweighs 100 resolutions made at the surface. The depth is available now. You feel it, that drop inside the chest, the slight ache at the back of the heart like a door that wants to be a gate. Listen, the field is not requesting a grand gesture, it's asking for decisive fidelity in small radii. Answer the text that matters and ignore the algorithm's circus. Drink water before argument, sleep when the body invites you, not after the plot is over. Tell the exact truth where your mouth usually detours into almost. Each act is a rivet. Rivets hold wings to fuselage. Flight is nothing but rivets that refuse to loosen under speed. The timeline can smell hesitation. Hesitation broadcasts static that attracts detours disguised as opportunities. In this window, you will be offered shiny alternatives that taste like progress and metabolize like delay. The test is texture. Coherent paths feel plain but weighty, like a door you've opened 1,000 times and only now realize leads outside. Incoherent paths feel sparkly and ungrounded, like a hallway of mirrors that flatter and misplace. Choose the door. Mirrors can't deliver you to a garden. Promise yourself out loud that you will not barter away your clarity for temporary applause. Applause is loud, then gone. Alignment is quiet, then permanent. You are not here to impress the room. You are here to tune it. When you tune it, the right ears will find you without marketing. Morphic resonance carries wordless advertisements, the frequency of a life that fits the soul. People follow that like migrating animals follow magnetic lines they do not see but cannot ignore. If you honor this window, the observer loop will escalate in your favor with embarrassing generosity. Pages will write themselves as if your hand were remembering an oath. Money will behave like a river that recognizes your valley. The body will begin recovering in sleep the parts of you thought were lost to chronic weather. This is not because you became worthy, it's because you became congruent. Worthiness was never the variable. Congruence is the circuit breaker you've just reset. There is one condition. You cannot carry the old costume through the gate. The identity that kept you safe in rooms that injured, you will not authenticate on the other side. Let it go like a passport you no longer need, because borders have turned into bridges. Grieve it, if you must. Grief is a solvent. Then step forward with the lightness reserved for travelers who finally packed correctly. Essentials only, nothing that argues with your next name. The countdown is not theatrical, it's gracious. You have enough breaths to cross if you spend them on crossing. In the next section, we will name a simple ritual to seal this shift in the body so the mind cannot negotiate it away. For now, place your palm over the sternum and feel the quiet thunder there. That is the drum that calls the corridor open. Answer while the corridor is listening. Don't reach for spectacle, reach for specificity. The field respects exactness. You're going to inscribe a simple act into the body so the mind can't renegotiate it tomorrow. Begin by waking your architecture. Sit or stand with the spine dignified, chin slightly tucked so the back of the neck lengthens like a horizon discovered. Let the shoulders melt downward, not back a quiet waterfall. Place your left hand over the sternum, right hand over the navel, and feel the little lightning between them. That circuit is a chapel. On the inhale through the nose, count 4 heartbeats, no metronome, only pulse. Pause for 2 beats, as if listening for a password. Exhale through the mouth for 6 beats, a soft thread unspooling from your ribs. At the bottom, pause for 2 more. That's 1 cycle. You'll do 7. Not 6, not 8, 7, to tell the morphic field you are speaking in the language of completion. As you breathe, let your gaze soften wide enough to catch the edges of the room without chasing them. Wide gaze quiets the hunter circuitry. Wide gaze tells the animal you are not in a corridor, you are in a meadow. The body believes meadows. On cycle 3, introduce a word, 1 word only on the exhale. Choose from the short list the field understands like keys. Coherence, aligned, remember, consent, it is done. The word is not a wish, it's a switch. Whisper it, barely audible, so your breath can carry it down the hallway of your fascia and pin it to the door of your cells. DNA listens to verbs more than adjectives. Choose a verb disguised as a noun. On cycle 5, add the subtlest tilt of the pelvic bowl, as if pouring an invisible teaspoon of light forward into your own future. You'll feel the sacrum answer like a heavy book settling on a shelf. This is how you tell the observer loop you are not merely contemplating coherence, you are locomoting it. Motion anchors declarations. Declarations without motion evaporate into performative mist. Now we make it public, not for applause, but for entanglement. When this part ends, you will write your chosen word once, where the world can see it. Comment it, pen it into a journal you never hide, send it to one person who loves your unperformed face. Public does not have to mean loud, it means witnessed. Witnessing collapses lingering probabilities that argue for your old costume. The moment you type coherence, a line snaps tight between you and every other consciousness that has kept that note under pressure. That is morphic resonance recruiting you into its choir. Choirs lift notes individuals can't sustain alone. Before you type, add a gesture the field can cache. With the thumb and forefinger of your right hand, touch the place between your eyebrows and then tap your sternum 3 times, lightly, politely, like knocking on a familiar door. Think of it as aligning aperture and amplifier, vision and voice, crown and chest, insight and broadcast. On the 3rd tap, say the word again, this time internally, but brighter, like you've turned a dimmer toward noon. If the mind petitions for embellishments, decline with kindness. Complexity is a ritual's enemy when you are crossing thresholds. Keep the architecture spare so there's nothing to trip on. 7 breaths, 1 word, 1 tilt, 1 tap, 1 public witness. Then stand up slowly as if the room were watching how to rise, and do one small coherent act in the next 5 minutes. Rinse a glass you didn't dirty. Place your device face down and walk to the window. Send the message you've been postponing because truth felt expensive. Pay now. The exchange rate is in your favor. The field will answer in proportional micro-synchronicities. A sound from the street will harmonize with your exhale. A sentence on a passing screen will echo your word. A memory will loosen from the attic and climb downstairs with a box labeled, "Open." Don't shrug. Nod back. Every nod is a rivet. Rivets make wings honest under speed. If you falter later today, and you might do not waste weather on guilt. Rituals are not contracts you violate. They're corridors you re-enter. Return through the same doorway. Posture, pulse, count, word, tilt, tap, witness. Each return strengthens the pathway like feet polishing stone on temple steps. This is how phase transition becomes durable, not by one grand ignition, but by many small fidelities that refuse to argue with their own clarity. Seal it now. The choir is listening. Choose your word and prepare to write it where the universe can overhear you, so that when part 7 unfolds, your signature is already dry, your frequency notarized, and the collective field can draft behind your wake without asking permission from the storms you outgrew. The word you set down didn't stop at your screen. It entered circulation like a rare coin, changing hands you'll never see, altering purchases you'll never track. That's how morphic resonance spends itself quietly, efficiently, through ordinary moments that stop being ordinary because your frequency notarized them. Somewhere tonight, a stranger put their phone face down because your nervous system made that micro-choice a little easier for theirs. Somewhere a conversation didn't escalate because your breath slowed here and the echo arrived there in time to soften a jaw. You think small coherence belongs to you. It belongs to neighborhoods. Watch how the grid answers. Streets feel fractionally safer at hours that used to rattle you. The driver who would have stolen the lane yields a car length without ceremony. In a bakery line, a woman changes her mind about a sentence she meant to weaponize. No trumpet announces this. The world simply takes a kinder step and then pretends that was the plan. Collective fields behave like flocks. One decisive turn from a few coherent birds persuades the sky to reorganize. You became one of those few. The air shows it. Entanglement scales through roles. The friend who reads your word in a comment hears their own word surface from the silt. Steady, enough, begin. They repeat your 7 breaths at a kitchen sink while water runs, and the sink becomes a font. Their child wanders in and sees a face that looks like weather clearing. That sight adjusts a future argument the child would have lost to adrenaline. The argument never happens, which means a shame never gets inherited, which means a decade opens. This is how destinies expand, not with spectacle, but with edits to scenes that never needed to be shot. Your fidelity licenses you to hold junctions larger than your biography. Workrooms reconfigure around you. The colleague who performs panic like a badge begins borrowing your pace without asking. Meetings lose their ritual waste because your silence refuses to fund it. This is not domination, it's contribution. You aren't bending people, you're bending probability. In cities where enough people keep a note, sirens run fewer red lights. Hospitals report anomalies they call good weekends. The data will never name you, and that is the point. Bridges don't sign their crossings. There is a rumor the soul tells the body when it trusts the day. You are allowed to be local to infinity. Local, because your hands still do dishes and answer emails and tie shoes. Infinity, because the way you do them stops leaking static into the grid. When static drops, clarity becomes communal property. Strangers make cleaner decisions and call it intuition. Markets wobble less than fear predicted. Teachers end classes 2 minutes early and use those minutes to bless a kid with eye contact that names them correctly. Somebody sleeps through the hour they usually injure themselves with scrolling. Somebody else wakes at the hour they usually numb. The ledger notices. You have felt history as a weight, begin to feel it as a sail. The collective is not a faceless mass, it is a chorus of specific throats practicing the same vowel. Your vowel is the one you wrote. You don't need a podium to amplify it. You need recurrence. Recurrence is the new leadership returning to the note so faithfully that others can rest their own, returning against yours like a back against a strong tree. Rest is contagious, so is permission, so is truth. Notice what expands when you refuse inheritance that is not yours to carry. Family systems will test your equilibrium. That is their job. They will invite you to perform the old character who managed everyone's weather. Decline with warmth. When you stop absorbing storms, you give the system the dignity of learning to shelter itself. Some will rise to the instruction, some will call you selfish. Keep the note anyway. A world that calls boundaries meanness is a world that has forgotten how to metabolize its feelings into fuel. Your example is a reminder, with edges smoothed by patience. The field is building muscle memory around your choices. Communities organize faster when coherence is present, like immune systems recognizing a pathogen and deploying elegant defenses instead of panic. Elegant defenses look like art openings where rivals bless each other's work. They look like neighborhood gardens that outlive the grant. They look like surgeons whose hands carry steadiness home to their children. You won't trace the line from your breath to their steadiness on a spreadsheet, but the line exists, and the body knows. Bodies bow to what keeps them whole. You do not need to be the face of any of this. Faces age, frequencies accumulate. Be accumulation. Be the quiet math that makes impossible outcomes affordable. When enough of us carry this arithmetic, the headlines will lag behind the street by years and then pretend they predicted it. Let them lag. You are not waiting for permission from print. You are writing in the ink reality reads first. Posture, pulse, word, act. Hold your word again now, just once, silently, the way a lighthouse checks its own bulb between storms. Somewhere, because you did, a corridor you'll never walk grows brighter by a lumen you'll never measure, and someone you'll never meet chooses the door instead of the mirror. That is expansion. That is victory without theater. And the grid quieter, wider, more precise, hums your name like a promise it intends to keep. Begin with temperature, not the room's, yours. A shy warmth gathers behind the breastbone as if someone cupped a candle there and protected it with both hands. The heat doesn't rush, it persuades. With each breath, it spreads a few millimeters up into the collarbones like sunrise seeping under a door, down along the sternum like tea running through porcelain. This is coherence becoming tactile, the abstract learning to speak in skin. Now notice weight. Your skull feels fractionally heavier, not oppressive, honest. Gravity is telling the truth to your bones. The jaw unhooks from its ancient argument. The tongue loosens from the roof of the mouth and sits like a small boat finally moored. With that tiny release, the brain's weather changes. Clouds part in places you didn't know were sky. Thought stops shouting. Sensation begins narrating in sentences made of yes. Let your attention slip behind the eyes the way a diver slips beneath the surface. No splash, only pressure and quiet. Behind the eyes is a lake. Behind the lake is a field. The observer loop is palpable here, like a soft magnetism between gaze and world. When you let the gaze widen, peripheral petals opening, the sympathetic hunt dissolves. The animal believes the meadow again. Shoulders melt. The trapezius stops climbing toward a problem that no longer auditions. You feel taller without growing. Trace the spine as if reading Braille from within. At the base, a hum low, honest, electric. It's not excitement, it's power deciding to be legible. Each vertebra receives the note and passes it along. Sacrum to lumbar to thoracic to cervical, a relay with impeccable form. When the hum meets the atlas at the crown, there is a brief coolness, like mountain air entering a room. Entanglement becomes somatic, an impression that your height includes more than your body, that you are being measured from earth to sky, and the tape is smiling. Travel to the hands. They tingle, not pins and needles, more like carbonated light. If you hold them a few inches apart, you'll feel it, the delicate viscosity between them, as if the air thickened into silk. That is the field answering your broadcast, a small feedback loop you could miss if you insist on miracles with larger fonts. Turn the palms toward the heart, and the silk becomes warmer, more personal, like recognition. There's music in fascia. Run attention along the inner arms and feel threads that used to knot now gliding in parallel, 1,000 tiny rivers flowing home at once. The shoulder blades widen on the back like doors that were always meant to be French. Breath travels further with no extra effort, as if your lungs were remembering a lease that allows more square footage. With each exhale, a faint ringing in the ears fades into the room's wider hush, a confirmation that your interior noise budget is being reallocated to clarity. Move the attention to the belly without judgment. There's weather there, always old winds, old winters, a few summer storms still rehearsing thunder. Place the right palm and wait. In that waiting, the gut-brain axis, a highway with impatient traffic, starts obeying lights. Peristalsis finds tempo, the pelvic bowl makes its subtle forward pour, and the sacrum answers with that heavy book on shelf feeling again, placed, permitted, precise. Phase transition pressure becomes comfortable, like the moment water realizes steam is a kind of freedom, not an exile. Feet now. Spread the toes inside your shoes or against the floor. The arches feel like bows strung with invisible cord. The heels plug into ground the way truth plugs into silence, decisive, unambiguous. The calves stop bracing for an impact that isn't scheduled. From heel to hip there's a single column, not a stack of compromises. Balance shifts from tightrope to bridge. Bridges don't wobble when they trust their engineering. Taste changes. The mouth fills with a clean mineral sweetness, as if the body minted a spring. Breath smells faintly of cedar and rain, even if the room doesn't. This is what happens when stress chemistry stops coloring your palate. The world returns to its native flavor, colors sharpened by a half shade, edges softened by exactly the amount that makes compassion easier than critique. You feel like a camera with the right lens at last, the wide angle that doesn't sacrifice detail. Synchronicity enters the flesh. Your heartbeat lands in step with a distant sound, the fridge motor, a far siren, someone's footsteps in a hallway you cannot see. The match is accidental only to minds that mistrust conversation. You are being conversed with. The field's etiquette becomes obvious. It answers in rhythms first, symbols later. When your body answers back with steadiness, symbols arrive generously. A notification pings at the exact paragraph where the old you would have quit. You don't. The ping feels like a bow. There is a single tear with no story attached. Let it have the cheek. Salt writes, a ship. The face you are wearing now is not a performance, it's a well-lit room. In that room, DNA leans closer to the music. Histones loosen another fraction. The archive opens one more drawer. You don't feel like a superhero. You feel like a citizen of a kinder gravity. Hold here for one silent breath, then one more. The warmth behind the sternum steadies into pilot light, ordinary, ready, faithful. You can walk with this. You can work with this. The body has remembered its citizenship in the field. And as the hum settles to baseline, a deeper pressure gathers at the threshold of change, the beautiful density that announces the next click of the hinge, where timelines trade names and the future puts out its hand. Hold very still, and you can feel it. The pressure that isn't pushing you down, it's pushing you through. Phase transition pressure. What simmered at 99 degrees has found its extra one, and the water in you remembers steam. This is not drama, it's reconfiguration. Inside the cellular library, librarians you cannot see wheel out carts of possibilities shelved under when coherence sustains. They have been patient with your visits. Tonight, you've brought a library card. The system respects. Breath kept, word witnessed, act completed, access granted. Start at the nucleus, not as fantasy but as reverent imagination disciplined by science. Chromatin loosens like dawn. Histone tails, those small permission slips receive new signatures in the quiet you made. Methyl marks reconsider their loyalties. Acetyl groups arrive like locksmiths with better keys. The blueprint has not changed, the legibility has. Gene expression is performance, and performance obeys the room. You changed the room. The orchestra tunes to a different A, and entire movements previously too ambitious for the rehearsal schedule become playable. This is DNA restructuring as climate change, not miracle show. Conditions shifting until dormant excellence stops being shy. Notice how the timeline answers. The air around decision points develops weight, as if choices possessed specific gravity, and your hands could feel the heavier truth. That weight is probability condensing. You reach for what matches your new density without needing slogans. Habits that used to own you show up for work and find the locks changed, the lights warm, the desk cleared. They shrug and leave without violence. The drama you feared was only ever friction between incompatible schedules. Entanglement tightens, in the kind way. Threads you set years ago across cities you barely remember begin tugging. A message from a name you once circled, an invitation dated tomorrow that feels like it was mailed by last year's prayer. A place you bookmarked without logic that now reads like coordinates. Synchrony clusters because coherence scales. Don't ask, why now? Ask, what wants to happen if I don't interrupt it? Then don't interrupt it. There's a sound that accompanies threshold. Not everyone hears it. Almost everyone feels it. For you, it begins like a low bell in the bones and resolves into a click behind the breastbone. Clean, satisfied, irrevocable. That click is the hinge where realities trade custodianship. Old outcomes still wave from the window as the car pulls away, but they've lost the keys. The relief is not giddy, it's geometrical. Angles finally agreeing with each other. Corners stop biting. Doors fit their frames. You walk through. This is the moment people misname as luck. It isn't luck. It's alignment that has matured enough to look effortless. The observer loop now runs with less drag. You broadcast fewer contradictions, so the field returns fewer puzzles. Emails answer themselves. The body wakes before the alarm with clarity instead of accusation. Food tastes like food again. The world is not simpler, your signal is cleaner, and complexity respects clean signals. It arranges itself to be useful. From the body's side, the upgrades feel like stamina without theatrics. Recovery accelerates after effort, after discourse, after old triggers that used to tax you for days. Inflammatory whispers subside because the prediction engine is no longer ringing false alarms. Vagal tone sings steadier. Heart rate variability spreads its wings. The gut keeps its promises. The skin glows not as an aesthetic victory, but as a byproduct of less civil war. You are spending fewer resources, arguing with weather that isn't happening. Prophetically, a corridor opens that was not on any of your maps. You will know it by 3 signs. First, the ordinary feels ceremonial. Second, the next step is plain but weighty. Third, fear has lost its eloquence. When fear can no longer write speeches in your voice, you are out of its jurisdiction. Courage need not roar, it needs to proceed. Proceeding is the spell that parts traffic. Now the shift. Timelines overlay like transparencies. You can sense the ghost of the life you would have lived had you declined this window. It's fatigue, it's theatrics, it's respectable almost. Bless it, it did its best. But your feet are elsewhere, and elsewhere is responding. People you love will feel the pressure to update or step aside. Let the field decide which. You are not abandoning anyone. You are discontinuing a contract with your own smallness. Smallness will try to renegotiate with nostalgia. Thank it for the stories. Decline the terms. There will be a temptation to proclaim, to make a flag out of the moment. Resist the neon. Flags flap in wind. Roots hold in weather. Choose roots. Let the breakthrough register in the ledger of lived days, in how you schedule mornings, in which silences you keep, in what you refuse to fake, in the new sincerity of your no. Breakthrough dramatized becomes content. Breakthrough grounded becomes culture. We are building culture. Finally, stand inside the simple proof. You feel less divided. Helplessness is quieter than background, almost comical in its lack of arguments. Gratitude shows up without gifts to unwrap and stays without being fed sugar. And while you are washing a dish or tying a shoe, a sentence arrives with the solidity of a door frame. It is time to carry this beyond yourself. The body agrees. The bell you heard becomes a beacon. Hold one more slow inhale. On the exhale, let the identity that ferried you here step back with honor. It is not being fired. It is being knighted into history. Ahead, the mission clarifies not as burden, but as the exact weight you were built to lift. The hinge has clicked, the corridor is open, the future is already leaning in to help. Listen to the room you're in. It has learned your name. The hum behind the sternum is not a visitation anymore, it's residence. This is where mission begins, not loud, not performative, but accurate. You have crossed with your whole attention, and the field has answered with its signature courtesy, more reality, less noise. Now, the work is simple and royal. You will walk as a local of the quantum field, letting coherence be the language your days are written in. Your first assignment is clarity. Clarity about what your presence authorizes and what it no longer funds. You will not subsidize rooms that require your smallness to stay comfortable. You will not outsource your discernment to applause, algorithms, or the ache of old narratives, asking for one more rerun. You will cultivate the sovereign rhythms that make you a clean junction. Sleep that restores the archive, breath that resets prediction, words that move probability instead of inflating theater. This is not a private self-improvement plan, it is grid maintenance. Your second assignment is generosity, disciplined by boundaries. You carry a tuning reference now. Others will borrow it, sometimes consciously, often by osmosis. Let them, but don't leak. Bridges do not dissolve to prove their kindness. You will offer steadiness, not rescue. Precision, not panic. Presence, not performance. When asked for a sentence, give the one that saves a week. When asked for your attention, give it fully or not at all. Half attention is a public hazard for those tasked with junctions. You were given this mantle because you return quickly. Keep returning. Your third assignment is witness. Document coherence, the way a scientist logs results and a mystic records visions. The micro-synchronicities, the clean refusals, the improbable ease that arrives when you listen before you move. Your record will be a lantern for the version of you who will inevitably feel weather again. Weather is not a verdict, it's a cycle. When storms visit, you will do what you taught your body to do. Posture, pulse, word, tilt, tap, witness, act. Rituals are bridges you can carry. Your fourth assignment is craft. The field adores artisanship. Make something precise, an email that ends in mercy without losing backbone, a meal that tastes like a vow, a calendar that treats mornings like altars, a conversation that retires an old costume without burning the theater. Your craft, repeated, becomes morphic instruction. People will learn from your geometry without needing your explanations. Let your life be legible to those who can't yet name why they trust it. And finally, your assignment is blessing. Bless the road you walk so that strangers inherit easier choices. Bless the door you close so that the next hand feels welcomed, not shamed. Bless the version of you that brought you here, then release it with ceremonial kindness. Bless the future by becoming its favorite ancestor, one whose coherence saved the descendants hours of unnecessary thunder. Look again at your hands. The carbonated light hasn't left, it has stabilized. Hold them an inch apart and feel the silk of the field answering. That is your signature now. Wherever you carry it, reality will recognize itself and agree to move. If doubt visits, let it sit beside you until it gets quiet enough to learn. Teach it the word you chose. Teach it to breathe like you. The corridor ahead is not narrow, it's precise. Precision feels like freedom when you agree with it. Step with the gait of a citizen of kinder gravity. Speak like a lighthouse. Work like weather changing. Rest like a promise kept. Your shift is not a private victory, it is a public evolution. Humanity reorganizes around the few who keep their note. Keep yours. The choir is forming, the grid is listening, the hinge has clicked. Proceed.